Gamar Chatima Tova, everyone. Good Yantif. I heard nothing in response. Gamar Chatima Tova and Good Yantif. Thank you. Thank you. You know, as we're up here on the Bima, and there's a tremendous amount of love and support going on as we pass our Sifrei Torah, literally our tradition, the story that makes up who we are as individuals and who we are as a people. I love the comments that happen on the Bima. They're great. They're priceless. When we were finished and put the Sifrei Torah away, Bruce, thank you for asking everyone if they're okay. That's good. It's a big task to hold the Torah. It's not always so easy. But Bruce, the comment about wanting a Hershey kiss, that you should need to add to your list for repentance for this upcoming year. I will tell you this, that something happened to me in between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur that in the 24 years I've had the blessing of being on the Bima over the holidays, has never happened. Now, I've gotten calls before where someone says, you know, Rabbi, I loved your sermon. Tell me the punchline again. Well, that wasn't my sermon, but I'm happy to tell you the punchline. But this year, I got an influx of emails and pulled aside several times with people offering parrot jokes. First time ever. So let me just say that if you thought your rabbi was cool because he had 2 parrot jokes, I got so many parrot jokes, I don't even know where to begin, but I'll stop. I want to read for everyone a short piece here. Again, from this wonderful book, 60 Days, A Spiritual Guide to the Holidays. And this one is entitled, The Cycle of Forgiveness. It says this: the secret of being able to forgive others is to remember that God gave you life because you matter to God. You have a vital and irreplaceable role to play in the perfection of God's world. When you remember that, you can have the strength to rise above the pain others have caused you and forgive both them and yourselves. The word forgiveness in Hebrew, machila, is related to the word machol, meaning circle. Life is meant to be a circle encompassing all of our experiences and relationships in one harmonious, seamless whole. When someone hurts us, the circle is broken. Forgiveness is our way to mend the fracture. Forgiveness means not merely forgiving the person who hurt us, but forgiving ourselves, forgiving God, forgiving even life itself with all of its bizarre and sometimes cruel twists and turns. When you forgive, the circle is again complete, and you find yourself encompassed by the wholeness of God's creation, of which each of us is an integral part. And then you can have the confidence that this Yom Kippur, you will hear God saying to you, I will forgive you as you have asked. It's really a beautiful image, the idea of a circle. And we know that a circle itself is not always easy to draw, but it's also not the reality of many of our lives. Our lives are not always smooth and flowing. Our lives aren't as simple as the beauty and simplicity of a circle. And in fact, a circle itself has no end, no beginning. We have ends, just like we had a beginning. The love of a circle is something that holds no time and no space, much like God. We say that God, perhaps, is the way that through God, we are able to find that completeness and that wholeness of an unending circle. It's ideal, but it's hard. To me, I think the reality of our lives and who we are and what we experience today, much like what we learn our ancestors and loved ones experienced in the past, are different shapes. It's not smooth. Maybe our lives are more like a rectangle or a triangle or a square. Something where along our path we encounter a sharp turn that forces us to redirect ourselves. Maybe we are more like an octagon or a hexagon with more subtle shifts, but still we're constantly redirecting. What we make of our lives is what's inside that defined space. Because irrespective of the shape that we understand our lives to take, our time is limited and defined, just like every object I described, from a circle to a hexagon. It's limited. It's our responsibility to shape how we live. But when we're criticized and we're judged, sometimes we feel trapped in that limited space, in that limited time that we have to truly see and find ourselves. The quality of our lives really rests on our ability to identify who we are, to accept who we are, to commit to being better, but to understand on a deeper level why we are who we are. Once we are able to address those questions and understand ourselves in a way that we haven't really looked at ourselves before, we'll find that we are much better equipped to mold ourselves into new shapes, to fill the space that we have in those shapes, and for us to really proactively become better people and influence the world. Our Machzorim teach us this about who we are. This is written by Nina Beth Carden. It says, "Emotions ebb and flow throughout these holy days. Paradoxes swim in the stream of prayer. At one moment, we believe our deeds to be of such import that the world stands still so that we may take account of them. At another moment, we imagine ourselves so small, so insignificant, that our lives are like a passing breath. We are great, and we are small. We are the center of the universe, and we are nothing at all. And yet, no matter how large we imagine our sins to be, and no matter how puny we imagine ourselves to be, God will never forsake us. And my hope is that just as God doesn't forsake us, neither do we. We don't forsake ourselves and give up. Based on what Nina Beth Carden was teaching, she created this sense of imagery of being great and being small, the dichotomies that we experience throughout our lives, the polarization, you're all of one or you're all of the other. But are we? Are we really solely good or solely bad? Are we always right or are we always wrong? My guess is that's not an accurate description of our lives, because most of us, all of us, ebb and flow between those different shades of gray, not only in understanding others, but certainly in understanding ourselves. But how do we determine who we are? We all have our interests. We all have what we like to do, what we like to eat, where we like to go. But today, as we stand in judgment, my question is, how does judgment impact our views of who we are? Right now, I just got the most precious look from Ren Rosen. Thank you, Ren. Thank you. Right now, each of us are judging each other. We are. Who's here? Who's not here? Who's paying attention? Who's chapping a drimmel? We're judging each other. And when we judge one another, those judgments impact who we believe we are. If we hear over and over and over again that we are wrong, do you know what we start believing? We're wrong. If we hear over and over and over again that we're great, we start believing that we're great. The worst thing that can happen from that is development of an identity that's not really an identity. For example, we might have, we might find ourselves in a situation where, I'm going to use a silly example, math, okay, something I struggle with. We have math. If I'm always saying 5 plus 5 is 9, and I keep getting the positive reinforcement of, that's right, you're good, you're almost there, it's terrific, it's wonderful, then I'm going to say, you know what? 5 plus 5 is 9. I know that because people keep telling me that I'm good at math. So I walk into a room and I say, do we have a minion here? And I count. And I say, yeah, we've got 5 over here. And we've got 5 over here. Oh, wait, we need 1 more. And people look at me and they say, what is this guy talking about? Stacy Sachs, you're giving me that look right now. What is this guy talking about? Okay. But how we learn to be ourselves is greatly influenced by what we hear from others. All the more so. All the more so. Who we are is greatly shaped by our perception of what other people might be thinking of us. I'll tell you this story. It was within the first week of being at the Jewish Theological Seminary. You know, everyone's in there sizing everyone else up, and everyone is nervous, but no one wants to admit that they're nervous. And we go to the Women's League Seminary Synagogue for davening, and this was, I think, a mincha, our first week there. And everyone's looking, and this little group of friends is sitting here, and one little group of friends is sitting here. And I walk in, and I see one elderly lady sitting right over there. I did not mean to point at that in that direction. I see one elderly lady sitting out in the congregation. Okay? I said, looks safe to sit next to. And I go and I sit, and now I feel like everybody's looking at me. And now I feel like everybody's like whispering and going, who's this guy sitting over there? I think everyone knows that I am nervous and that I'm doubting my abilities, that I'm questioning, should I be here, whatever it might be. After services, people come up to me. How do you know her? I said, who? They said, the woman you were sitting next to. I said, I don't know her. They said, that's Abraham Joshua Heschel's widow, Sylvia Heschel. I was like, yeah, me and Sylvia go back a long way. But the point is that I was shaping my own opinion of my abilities and myself from what I perceived other people were thinking. And that's wrong. And that's really wrong. And it's hard to change. You know, one time we were drawing on this imagery. I've had the pleasure of standing under the chuppah with many different couples. And I want to say it's about 15, 18 years ago, I'm standing under the chuppah with this lovely couple. And I'm talking to them. You know, it's going to be a wonderful life. We have all of this promise, all of this hope. And at one point, the bride's face sort of corkscrews. And she's like this. What am I saying? Oh my gosh, what did I say? I'm starting to feel so bad. I'm like, my hand is starting to shake with the wine glasses because I'm worried that somehow I offended the bride, who's the daughter of some of the prominent lay leaders of my congregation. In my mind, I'm looking at her face, I'm saying, my contract has just ended. It is horrible. About 4 months later, no one says anything. About 4 months later, I get a call from her. She said, Rabbi, I need you to write me a get. I'm getting divorced. I said, really? She said, yeah. I said, come on in and let's talk. She comes in and she says, there was a point under the chuppah where something clicked in my head and I said, why am I under the chuppah with this gentleman? I don't want to marry this gentleman. So now I'm saying to myself, that was the turning point. That was the turning point. She wasn't mad at me. I was helping her to realize that she didn't want to marry this gentleman. But I thought I had done something really wrong. And I was letting that affect my self-esteem, my self-identity, who I am. And quite frankly, I was feeling very guilty about that. There's a gentleman hold on one second. There's a gentleman. Here he is. There's a gentleman named Charles Cooley. Charles Cooley was a sociologist in the early 1900s. And he developed a theory called the looking glass self. And essentially with the looking glass self, we challenge ourselves with empathetic introspection. What that means is that we look at ourselves in a different and more understanding way, putting ourselves in others' shoes so that we can try our best from another person's perspective to see how they view us. And then our challenge is to adjust ourselves accordingly to who we are. That's the essence of the looking glass self. It was actually interesting because when I went to visit Zach at Indiana, it was one of those things where you expect the unexpected. I asked him how his classes were going. He said, good. I said, tell me what you're learning in your sociology class. And I expected him to say stuff. But he said, have you ever heard of the looking glass self? Yeah. I said, no. And he started talking and talking and talking, and it was absolutely wonderful. And the essence is this. There's a certain ebb and flow to our self-identity. It's what we think of ourselves. It's who we are based on our past experiences. It's who we want to be in our future experiences, but also it acknowledges the fact that our identity is in constant motion. And that constant motion isn't just within ourselves. It's within the greater community. Society helps to shape who we are. Our congregation helps to shape who we are. Our interactions with each other in building our community help to shape our understanding of ourselves. The challenge is for us to be able to look at ourselves through that looking glass and say, I wonder right now what others are thinking. How can I adjust to be a stronger person, a more inspiring person, a funnier person? I thought that would get a laugh. Thank you. The idea of perceiving how others judge us is it really shapes us. It really does. It really impacts us with certain feelings, like if we do something well, we're proud of ourselves. If we say something that's inappropriate, perhaps we're ashamed. I mentioned the parrot jokes before. In my arsenal of parrot jokes, I only have a couple that are Bima-friendly. Okay? If I would tell a non-Bima-friendly parrot joke, now certainly some would laugh, but that's what people would remember. Can you believe the rabbi told that awful, inappropriate parrot joke on Yom Kippur, on Kol Nidre? You know? But it's this sense of the balance between pride and shame, contentedness or contentment and disappointment, whether we're happy or we're sad or we're elated or we're guilty. All of these things that we feel about ourselves, a catalyst to those feelings are what we are perceiving others think we are. It's hard. And it has some really difficult results. During the Al-Chet prayer, when we all stand, we beat our chests, we say Al-Chet, we have sinned for this variety of different reasons. One of those reasons is imutz halev. Imutz itself is a familiar word because it comes from amatz, and we're told chazak ve'amatz, go forward and be strong. Okay? We say that in Psalm 27, that we're supposed to do that, the psalm for the season of repentance. This is part of a charge between Joshua and Moses about going on with new leadership. Be strong, take courage. But imutz halev is the hardening of our hearts. That's something that we do. We harden our hearts to each other. Now, when we think about hardening hearts, oftentimes we think about Pharaoh and the Exodus from Egypt, and we can say to ourselves, well, we learn in our tradition that it was actually God who hardened Pharaoh's heart because the list goes on. The Israelites weren't ready for freedom. Pharaoh hadn't truly changed, all of these different things. But let's, for a moment, think about this outside of the context of God and through the eyes of the Egyptians. The Israelites, Moses goes, let my people go. Pharaoh says, all right. The Egyptians say, what in the world is wrong with you, Pharaoh? Why are you doing that? You're a weak leader. Pharaoh, these Israelite slaves do everything we tell them to do. Pharaoh feels that pressure, and Pharaoh caves. And Pharaoh says, oh my goodness, I'm a weak leader. I've done the wrong thing. What am I going to do? And he hardens his heart, and the Israelites come back. Now, for us, this idea of imutz halev is a fundamental challenge of forgiveness. How do we forgive ourselves for hardening our hearts due to the misperceptions that we have from others? I once had a friend who, this is about 22 years ago. once had a friend who came up to me and he said, "I don't want to ever talk to you again." I said, "What did I do?" And this person said, "You know what you did." I said, "I don't know what I did." And the person said, "Yes, you do," and walked away. That person doesn't speak to me. I've approached the person. I've apologized. I have no idea what I did. My fear is that he perceived I did something that I didn't do. Because I can't imagine that I would unknowingly do something so awful that he would never want to speak to me again. I don't know. That's really hard. His heart is hardened to me. And when we think about those who have hurt us over time, we harden our hearts to them. If someone we think wrongs us, then why should we extend ourselves to them? If someone has hurt us, why should we forgive them? This is all part of the hardening of the heart, where, in fact, we could be the ones who are wrong because we're not understanding correctly. Our perception is off, but we take that as fact. So in order to address this, God does something incredible over these high holidays. And if we think about this too, just like with the Kol Nidre prayer, I want everyone to really think about this over the year ahead, over the coming hours that we're going to be spending together ahead. Kol Nidre itself says, we know we're going to mess up, so please forgive these various oaths and vows that I might be taking, because in the year ahead, I don't want to be carrying this around. We take 10 days, Rosh Hashanah to Yom Kippur, for this powerful introspection. What if the 10 days between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur were actually a celebration? Because Yom Kippur to Rosh Hashanah, we've taken the time for introspection and self-reflection and growth. It's not something that's limited to one day or 10 days. This should be something that we think about for the entire year ahead. And if this is the way that we begin our services this evening, then all the more so. Let's engage in this process from now until next Rosh Hashanah, and then between next Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. But God addresses imutz halev, this hardening of the heart, with this. We learn in Devarim, Parashat Nitzavim, and it's in our high holiday liturgy itself. Umal Adonai Elohecha et levavcha v'et levav zarecha. That God, in a sense, circumcises, umal, like Brit Milah, circumcises our heart and the hearts of all of our future generations, li'ahava, to love Adonai Elohecha, to love God. B'chol levavcha v'chol nafshecha, with our heart and our whole soul, leman chayecha, so that we can live. So we can live. How can we live if something is removed? Circumcision implies removal of something. We know that. We enter the covenant. Little boys enter the covenant by having a circumcision, and the foreskin is removed. So if God is circumcising our heart, wouldn't we naturally think that our heart is getting smaller? God keeps cutting away at our hearts. It doesn't seem to make sense. But if we look at it through the lens of God is cutting away the parts of our heart that we have hardened, and we can't figure out how to soften them again so that they're embracing and they're available for the love and the joy that we have the opportunity to fill our hearts with. With a heart being a center of our emotions and spirituality, with it being the seat of knowledge and wisdom, our hearts are the ones that motivate us to dream and actualize those dreams. So we hurt ourselves by hardening our hearts. God helps us. It's a radical concept, and it has the potential to produce radical inner transformations so that we can more clearly see who we are, better understand how others see us. All we need to do is say, our hearts contain parts of us that we don't like. They can be cold or callous or ugly. They can be the negative thoughts, the senseless hatred, the pent-up anger. But we need room to grow. We need to soften our hearts. We need to accept each other for who we are. But we need to accept ourselves for who we are and what we can be. So tonight, as we begin a serious and concentrated period of time focused on forgiveness, self-discovery, and self-improvement, may we have the strength and wisdom to see ourselves for who we are and better understand how others see us. With courage, may we reach out to those whom we've hardened our hearts to, with the desire for forgiveness and with the ability to forgive. May we accept our imperfections and the imperfections we believe others see in us and realize that we have not yet become all that we can be. In 5783, I pray that our love, appreciation, and support of each other continues to grow, and together, we tirelessly work to be our best selves and do our part to bring greater health and healing to our loved ones, our congregation, our greater community, and the world itself. Gamar Chatima Tova, Good Yantif, may we be sealed in the book of life for a happy, healthy year ahead together.
Shikoach.